doing here, please go back and watch what I did yesterday. I talk a lot about using a smartphone to make adjustments, to make corrections on portraiture. And as I started to say yesterday, if you are Everett Kinsler or Daniel Green or Nelson Shanks and any one of a whole host of other fabulously good portrait painters, I ain't talking to you. I'm only talking to us mere mortals. Okay, we keep the demigods out of this conversation completely. This is for people who are struggling to do portraits like I am. I am not a full-time portrait painter. That might change over the next 10 years. I don't know. I might turn into it because for me it's like the last frontier. It's the biggest challenge left in painting is portraits. Hey, Heather, good to see you again. Good to hear from you again. Okay, so yesterday I showed you something, and I have done the same thing again. I repeated the process. So yesterday I painted these two faces, and then I took pictures again. I won't repeat everything I've done, but this is what I've ended up with. I take the image, I flop it, I make notations about changes that need to be made, then I transfer these notations to this. Let me zoom in a little bit here. I transfer the notations from here to here, and then from this, I paint the changes. Okay, all that is to say, I think I'm pretty happy with the faces as they are right now. And let me zoom in again one more time to see if you can see that. And I know you're still seeing it at an oblique angle. Let me get as close as I can. Okay. I'm fairly happy. A couple comments. Number one, doing portraits at this size is just insane. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But it's what I'm stuck with. Now, a couple things I'll point out. A couple things I am happy with. Number one, I think I have a reasonable likeness. Now, I would like you to notice how bad the photograph is. I need to make changes with this, by the way, if I continue with this, because I've invented a whole lot of information here that is actually not available in the photograph, which does not make me comfortable. But as far as I can tell, this looks like the bride and the groom. And again, if you want to know what's the deal with these four pictures, then go back and look at yesterday. Thank you, Emmanuel. Appreciate it. I started to say something yesterday, if you were with me, and then I drew a blank. I did some funny joke. And that'll learn me a lesson to try to say anything funny. Because I forgot what I was going to say, and I remembered it. This is very important, okay? Again, talking to us mere mortals. When you're working on portraits, let me tell you the kind of internal dialogue that is not only worthless, but is actually harmful, damaging, destructive to your artistic skills. Are you ready? The words that you say in your head, not only are they worthless, they actually send you in a bad direction. I'll give you an example, the kinds of words that are worthless. Okay, now let's pretend you and I were doing a portrait of this young lady, and we say things like, here's the bad language. Okay, this is what you should not say. Well, I think her cheek needs to be a little more rounded. Not only worthless language, but damaging. Things like, I think her nose looks too pudgy, or her nose looks too pointy, or her chin looks too sharp, or her eye looks too... Hi, Ani. Thank you for joining me. All of that language is, as I say, not only worthless, it's actually damaging. The reason is, if you're an artist and you're trying to do a portrait, when you use words like ear, cheek, chin, lips, nose, eye, forehead, neck, and so on and so forth, you're opening your filing cabinet. And in your filing cabinet, you have all these super simple, survival-oriented symbols, SSSOS, super simple survival-oriented symbols. You have a symbol for a nose, chin, forehead, eye, all those things. When you're doing a portrait, that is not the kind of language you need. Hello, Toby. Welcome back. The kind of language that you need is language like this. Let's talk about for instance, let me zoom right in real tight here again. The kind of language, let's say we're talking about this line right here, her neck right there, okay, her chin, neck. The kind of language that is useful is, I believe that line should be raised up a 32nd of an inch, or lowered a 32nd of an inch, or a 64th or a 100th of an inch. It doesn't matter, a centimeter, a millimeter, not a centimeter, you know, a millimeter. That is the kind of language that is helpful. Let me repeat this. The kind of language that is not helpful is, I think her neck looks too blank. Any sentence that has the word neck in it is a worthless sentence. You don't, and you can't say pudgy or thin. Okay, let me zoom back out here so you understand what I'm saying. I'll use an example from my own experience. In 2012, most of you did not know me back then. That's 5 years ago. That for me, that was the year of the portrait. I did 280 some portraits in 2012. The goal was to do one every day. I failed. I'm not beating myself up. I did 280 portraits. Most of them very quick, by the way. Not full, complete portraits, just practice. And I had a blog. I think the blog is still available. You can find it. You go to oneportraiteveryday.com. I think it is. And on that blog, I invited people to help me do portraits, to help me get better. And here were the rules that I laid out. I said, you can't say things like, the nose is too pudgy, the forehead's too sharp. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. All of that is analogous language, analogy language. All of that is like word picture, poetic language, you could almost say. All of that is, it's not technical. Remember, we're working on a two-dimensional surface. So the only language that's helpful is this line or this dot or that dot. Excuse me. Need to move north, south, east, or west. North, south, east, or west. Up, down, left, or right. That's the only language because it's a two-dimensional surface. You can't say things like, her cheek needs to be more rounded, or her cheek is too rounded. Do you understand? That language is not helpful. And not only is it not helpful, if you think that way inside your brain, you're actually damaging your own capacity to do a portrait realistically. Because if you were to say, for instance, this cheek needs to be more rounded, you know what the literal interpretation of that is? That I should come out here with some plaster and put some plaster on her cheek and make it into a carving where it comes out. But that's ridiculous. This is a flat surface. So the only things we can say in a portrait, and I hope I'm making sense and not just confusing you. The only thing that is valid language is, for instance, let's look at his thumb right here. And I haven't started refining his thumb. The language that is valid is like this point right here this line needs to move down and to the left about a 1/16 of an inch or about a millimeter. Does that make sense? You can't say his thumb looks too big, his thumb looks too high, his thumb looks too thick. None of that language works. The only language that is valid for an artist is this or that line needs to move either this way, this way, this way, or of course any angle. Does that make sense? But those are the only things we can say is this needs to move because this is a flat surface. And if you're not understanding what I'm saying, then, oh boy, it's because I'm saying it poorly, or it's because you don't understand that this is a flat surface. We don't build things out this way. We just move things this way or this way. Okay, whew. That might have helped somebody. Either that or I just discouraged you all from trying any kind of portraiture at all. Now, I'm happy with the faces, at least for today. Now, of course, tomorrow, if the painting is still here, if I haven't delivered it, I can look at it with fresh eyes, but I think I'm happy with that face. Now, let's start looking at the rest of the portrait. Again, here's the portrait, here's the photograph that I had to work with, and the faces are done, but none of the rest of the image is finished. And let's tackle her hand for a moment. And now, I don't like painting with one hand, but right now I have to because I'm going to be holding my phone, my reference, with one hand. And this line right here needs to move that way about a 32nd of an inch, right down here. Okay, so I'm doing what I told you. Now, okay, several things I could say. One is, especially doing portraits this size, of course, first of all, is crazy. Why did I ever get into this? It's nuts. They're just too small, but it's the assignment I have given myself, and I don't have any choice. If I'm going to change it, it's too late to change it on this portrait anyway. I have to do a portrait this size. One of the challenges is keeping edges soft. Now, her chin right here is really hard. In fact, it's so hard I might come in here and soften it just a little bit. You probably can't even see that. Let me zoom in and see if you can even see that. Again, so I'm just saying let's soften that razor sharp edge. Why? Because the term razor sharp and feminine woman face, let alone man face, those two terms don't go together. A woman's face is not, the edge of a woman's face should not be razor sharp. And right now what I've got here is way too sharp. So there, that's a little bit better. See, in real life, light diffuses, light bends around objects. We experience this all the time in real life. We just don't process it mentally. We just don't recognize what we're seeing. But yeah, there, that's better. I'm going to do, after this dries, I'm going to come in and do much of that along the edges of their faces. Trying not to change where the lines are, just trying to soften the lines a little bit as I'm doing there. Okay, now let's talk about this hand. Let me first of all, show you this hand. Okay, do you see that? Let me move it up just a little bit. Okay, this is what the photograph looks like. Unfortunately, if I paint exactly what this looks like, it will look wrong. This is a good example of you better not paint exactly what's in the photograph, because if you do, people will look at it and go, that ain't right. I don't know why I had to say that with a southern country accent, but I did. So I had better change this so that it looks like a believable hand. So I'm making a change to the photograph, because if I paint exactly what's there, people won't think it doesn't look right. It's just do you understand that photographs often show weird things? They always show what is possible, but they don't always show what is likely in reality. In fact, that is exactly what the photograph looks like of her hand. But it just so happened I caught it at a very funny angle. Her index finger's raised up a little bit, so it looks like a very strangely distorted hand. And if I paint it realistically, people are not going to believe it. They're not going to think that the photograph made a mistake. They're going to think that the artist, the portrait painter, made a mistake. Ew, he did a really bad job on that hand. If I do it realistic, that's what they think. Do you understand? If I do it the way it really is, they'll think, ew, he didn't do very, very good on that hand. So I better make some changes, which then requires me to know anatomy, right? I better know some anatomy, because now I'm not painting what I'm seeing. I'm having to paint what I understand about the human physique and the human form. Again, hope that makes sense to you. Now I'm going to soften this edge right here, because we don't want all the edges to be hard. Likewise down here, soften this shadow just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to leave that for now and come back to it later. While we're up here in his, he's got a boutonniere. That is to say, he's got a flower on his coat. And it goes just like this. I'm going to keep it really simple. The less explaining I try to do, the better. And a little bit of greenery, a green leaf right here. Okay, oh, and she's got a bracelet. Let's be sure we get that bracelet in there. And we do the dark first, always. Darks first, light last. Always. Darks first, lights last. So I do the dark part of the shadow of the bracelet first. You don't paint the light, the golden glow first. You paint the shadow first, then you come back and paint the light. Because you always do lights first, darks first, lights last. Let me do just a little bit. Probably close enough. One highlight on that, and that'll be good enough. Just using a really small brush. It's crazy. Okay, good enough. I'm going to leave you at that. That's a good enough episode. I've ranted and raved long enough. I hope that I've ranted and raved saying something helpful for you. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll be back later today. And subscribe if you haven't done so already. And please tell your artist friends. Lie for me. Tell them he's amazing. Make up good stuff, please. Hey, Heather, the collar could use some fuzzing also. Oh, yeah, good point. Indeed. Thank you, Heather. I will do that. His collar, right? Thanks for pointing that out. I agree. Okay, thanks. I'll be back in a little. Hello, friends. Welcome back. I want to, thanks, Heather, bring you in and talk about some of the basics. I'll put a title on this later, of course, and I'll call it something like the basics of overpainting. We all use the term underpainting, you know that, but nobody says overpainting. So I'm not sure it's a real term, but that's what I'm going to use it as to distinguish between underpainting. If you're familiar with the way I paint, let me put it, if you're not familiar with the way I paint, here it is. I do typically layers of transparent acrylic, several, because it dries quickly. You can slap down several layers, as I did on this painting. You can slap down things very quickly. Then I follow that up with several layers of transparent oil. And then basically just the last layer, the last phase of the painting process involves traditional oil painting or opaque out of the tube oil painting, or what I'm now today calling overpainting. And I want to describe for you, I've already done quite a bit on this painting, and I want to bring in to talk about more. Now, I'm not touching this area right now because it's a portrait, so a portrait has some different mechanics or different process about it, as I'm sure you know. And number one, you have to achieve a likeness. The portrait has to look like the person. So this is all very meticulous work. Let me zoom in here so you can see what I'm looking at. This is all very careful, meticulous. Now, that doesn't mean I can't come back, which I actually expect to, tomorrow when this is dry, and could do tiny, tiny touch-up, especially just a little bit of softening of edges and glow on this. But basically, that's all finished. Now, so I want to show about how I do the rest of this painting. So a little bit of background and setup then, especially for those of you who perhaps don't follow me on a regular basis. Again, layers of transparent, that word is very important, transparent acrylics. That's what gives my paintings the feeling that people associate with my paintings. And at the end of the acrylic process, and then I do a glaze of oil over the whole thing, any colors I want. So the whole painting gets darker, and then typically I come back immediately after that and lift out with a rag. Okay, but the point is, at the end of that process, all of the colors in the painting and the values are essentially where they need to be. In other words, if I wanted to put a green plant bush in the corner of this room, it's too late for me to add it now. I would have incorporated that in the early stages, like a watercolor painter. You watercolor people understand this implicitly. So in a way, I do my oil paintings sort of with a watercolor mentality. You don't add things late, layer, opaque, and so, you can add things late. No, everything has to be in from the beginning. Okay, enough of the setup then. Let me tell you about some of my thinking, some of my process when I get to this point. I'm thinking where to start. Basically, what I want to tell you again, and I'm not the only one who paints this way. It's a little bit unusual, but not unique. Let me tell you, one of my favorite living artists right now is named Tibor Nagy, Tibor Nagy, Nagy. He's lives, I forget, I need to look it up because I keep saying his name and then not telling you where he's from. Eastern Europe, anyway. And he does not do acrylic underneath, but he does very thin oil washes and then does very thick, opaque on top of the thin stuff. So slightly related to what I'm doing. So the main thing is, in this overpainting stage, is that you allow the underpainting to tell you what to do. I don't come in here and start introducing wild and crazy colors in particular, or shapes or images. The oil painting, the underpainting has told me almost everything that I need to know about where to go. So let me decide what to do now. Well, let me pick on something real easy. Let's go over to this area of the painting where I've got these. This is old rough lumber boards. Oh, thank you, from Slovakia. Thank you, Toby. Tibor Nagy is from Slovakia. And if you don't mind, I'm going to pick you up from your tripod just for a minute here and try to bring you in real close to see some of this painting. Yeah, good. You can see that pretty well. Do you see? Let me pick up something to point with. Do you see this orange streaks here? And even this red down here? I want you to know that all of that, and there's some really interesting texture. I don't know, how close can I get? Can I get a little glare on this so you can see the texture? Yeah. You can actually see some of the three-dimensional texture of this paint, right? Can you see that? Yeah. Okay, so just for what it's worth, I want you to understand that that's part of probably the very first splash of paint, is what I call it. The very first bit of paint that I applied to the canvas was acrylic, orange acrylic, applied with great spontaneity. And I like that stuff there because it's interesting, and the essence of good painting is making interesting marks. Now, I might want to come in here and tighten up, make this just a little bit more realistic, make it look just a tiny bit more like rough lumber. This is an old train station, by the way. The building that the wedding reception was being held in the other day is, I'm almost getting out of your picture there. So it's old rough lumber, and I have some pencil lines, and I won't go into a long description of how and why I use pencil, but I do use pencil a good bit. So there, can you see the slight difference I've made? Just very subtle. One of the points I want you to understand, though, is that the paint, the underpainting itself tells me what color. For instance, there's a red, strong red swoosh right there. Swoosh, I don't know what else to call it. So I just mixed up a little bit more red on my brush, and I agree with what's already there, just sort of exaggerate it a tiny bit. Okay? So if I do much more of that, it'll be too much. So I want to be careful. I'm going to do just a little tiny bit more way up here. I sound like Bob Ross for a second there, didn't I? Just a little tiny bit more. Happy boards. I don't think Bob Ross ever did happy boards, did he? Okay, so that's very, very subtle. And again, one of the main principles I want you to understand is that I'm not making up wild and crazy new stuff. I'm simply responding to what's already on the canvas. And see, here's the value of doing a good underpainting. Even though I do it very fast and very loose and very spontaneous, still there's enough control so that I end up with an image that I don't have to fight with in the overpainting stage. I don't fight with it. I cooperate. Now let's go back. Let's go down here to the very corner of this painting where I have some people, and I've already done. This is all stuff I did just a few minutes ago. Let me do a little bit more. Painting around those figures. So I'm trying to mix up a color that matches this right here. That area right there, of course, is underpainting. And I want to mix up an opaque version of whatever color that is. I've got some orange and some oxide red. I think that's probably going to be too light. Yep, that's too bright. Let me add adding some black to that. How about that? That's sacrilege, isn't it, to use black paint? Well, it actually is not. Your professor told you don't use black. What he or she should have said was, don't misuse black. That's another story I'll go into another time. And yes, that will be in my book, The Breakable Laws of Painting. I have not been able to work on the book for several weeks now. I'm anxious to get back to it, and I may release the first chapter available to you. I'll let you know. If I have your email address, I will send you a promotional where you can buy, just for a couple dollars, you can buy the first 26 pages of my book and then get a coupon for a discount on the rest of the book as it becomes available. I'm very excited about getting it out. It's a summary of everything I know about painting. Both things I know about painting at this stage of my career. I already have plans for volume 2. When I really learn how to paint better, I'll do volume 2. Okay, now I'm mixing. I want to do this is a man sitting here because he's wearing a tie. Not that a woman couldn't wear a tie, blah, blah, blah. But for most of us, for most of the time, it's a man that wears this kind of tie. Yeah. Can you see that? Can I zoom in any more? Just a little bit. So, the whole time that I'm painting, I'm keenly aware of the fact that I am painting paint. That the most important thing, the most important thing on my canvas is paint. What am I doing paintings of? The answer is paint. I'm doing paintings of paint. I know that sounds crazy, but it's so true. Like right now, I want to do the back of this person's chair. Okay, so they had white plastic chairs at this reception. I don't want to make a big deal about the fact that they were plastic. I don't want to. The chairs have to stay pretty subtle because they're not. But I don't want these figures just sort of floating in space. Let's tell the generations to come, so to speak, who look at this painting. Tell them that the people were sitting on chairs. Now let's move over and do this chair right here. So I'm going to add some purple to the mix that I have. You see, I'm responding to the color that's already there, and I'm doing a lighter version of what's already there. But I'm not shooting in the dark. I'm not going, boy, I wonder what color I should do this. Boy, I don't have any idea. No, I do have quite an idea. The answer is I should do the color that's already there, just usually a lighter version of it. So again, I want this to sort of look like the back of a chair, but more than anything, I want it to look like what? Paint. That's right. I want it to look like paint. I would like all of my paintings to look as though there was an explosion at the paint factory, and now this right here is all a little bit too busy. So let me just. Did you see that? That was crazy, wasn't it? Did you see that crazy move? Okay. Anytime I give my hands permission to have little seizures, I call it, without my permission. I give my hands permission to have a little seizure without my permission. Anytime that I've been painting too carefully for too long, too many minutes, too many seconds, then my hand knows it has permission to do something crazy without me analyzing or thinking what it is that it's doing. Whew, that's weird, I know. But I'm trying to describe good painting process for you. At least what I think is good painting process. I want to give, there's some lines here that give the slightest hint of like glassware on the candle, and candles on the table. So if I do just a little bit of that, maybe it'll look like, there were white tablecloths here, by the way. And I'm going to pick up a brush, and I'm going to go, wait, I need a bigger brush. Wow, did you see that? And by the way, so I love what just happened. There's just a tiny bit too much of it. So it's real easy to come back then with a rag and diminish some of that. But that is nice. Let me show you what I'm talking about, okay? You see what I did, right? I did some fairly careful drawing, and pick you up again. Did some fairly careful drawing, and then I took a big dry brush and swooshed it very quickly at an angle up and to the right. Do you see that? Then I discovered it was just a little bit too much of a good thing, so I erased a little bit of it right here. Okay, back on your tripod. Back where you belong. Back where you're not shaking. That now means that I can come in here again with a slightly lighter. If you've watched me very much at all, you've heard me say this, and I'm going to say it again. Here's one of the mostly one of the breakable laws of painting. That's, you better know this law first, and then learn how to break it. It's almost always a good idea to come back with a slightly lighter version, slightly lighter color, and do a little bit more on top of what you just did. So that's what you see me doing here. I had this color a minute ago, see? And then I mixed up a mixture of paint slightly lighter than it was there, and I'm adding little details to that. Now I'm thinking, I keep sounding like a Bob Ross today. This is really strange. Not on purpose. Maybe it's because I'm sort of whispering because there's other people in the house. I don't know. Okay. I'm going to give just a hint of flesh tone to the side of this person's face. Just a hint. Not, and the back of his neck. I guess it's a man if it's, or a woman with short hair. And let's do a little similar on the side. This is a woman, I feel like, for sure, because of the shape of her hair, and a little bit of a neck. I don't think it was a cold evening, so I don't think there was anybody wearing sleeveless clothing. So I'll leave it. Sorry, a little bit of a cough today. I'm already on the uphill side of it, so. Okay, let me zoom up from there. I'm very close to being finished with that corner of the painting. I know, there was red stuff. There were red decorations. I don't even remember now what they were, but there were red things on the table because this was a wedding that was taking place just a few days before Christmas. So they had a red color theme going on in the decor, and I think that's good enough. Now, if you back up and look at the whole painting to get perspective, yeah, I think I'm quite happy with that. I reserve the right. I'll be looking at this painting one more time tomorrow. And again, for those of you who missed it, this is one of my wedding paintings. Although the assignment from this particular client, old friends, it turns out, was slightly different. They really wanted a more portrait-like rendering of the wedding couple. So this is unusual. Unusual for me to finish the painting at home. I would think about 1 out of 40 of my wedding paintings I don't finish at the reception. Maybe 1 out of 20, somewhere in there. A little bit of shadow, softening that edge. Same thing here. Okay, let's switch to a new part of the painting altogether, shall we? Let's look at this. Was an arbor. I think an arbor is some kind of superstructure, curved structure like thin wood with a plant growing on it. Is that an arbor? I believe it is. This was artificial. That is to say, it wasn't real plants. It was nice looking artificial plants. And when the wedding ceremony was taking place, the bride and groom, the preacher was standing under there, and the bride and groom right in front of it. So it was a part of the decor for the wedding, and then they also used it during the reception. So made just a nice, otherwise this area would be rather empty. So let me just demonstrate for you again how I use the underpainting to respond in the overpainting. I don't have to make stuff up. Most of what I need is already there on the canvas. I'm trying to mix up now this color, or in here somewhere, one of these colors. So I've got some titanium white, got some cad yellow imitation, medium, not light, but medium yellow. And let's see if I'm close. Oh yeah, excellent. Just a little bit lighter than what's there, which is what I usually want. So again, I want this to look like a good painting. So I'm most concerned about the character and the shape and the feel of the marks. I'm most concerned about the marks themselves. Secondarily, again, I hope you're some students listening to me, because this is the way you need to learn to start thinking about painting. Secondarily, I want it to look like the arbor that I just described for you. I want it to look like an arbor standing, by the way, and this is all a fabric, sheer fabric, ruffled fabric with lights hanging down behind it. So I'll do the lights. You can see a little bit of it already, but I'll do more of it as I go along. So what I'm trying to indicate now is the little gaps of light in between the parts of the arbor. Okay, so there's leaves over here and so on and so on and so forth. But I want it to look again, I'm repeating myself, I want it to look mostly like dabs of paint. You with me? Secondarily, backing up from that a little bit, I would like the mind, and I think most non-artists, they're not even aware of what their brain is doing, but it's my job as the artist to sort of know what their brain is doing. And here's what I want their brain to do. I want their brain to go, oh, look. I want their brain to go, oh, look, dabs or daubs of paint. Look at smudges of paint, huh? And then kind of their brain goes, by golly, that's a picture of an arbor with little leaves and flowers around it. Do you hear me? Now that is not quite, that's not really true here. Here, their brain is going to go, golly, there's a bride and a groom. Okay, so do I consider this the best kind of painting? No, I consider this the best kind of painting, where what the brain sees first is paint, and what it sees second is picture. And I've never said it exactly that way before, so I want to say it again. Good painting is, you ready? Here's the description of good painting. Number one, the brain sees paint. Number two, the brain sees picture. And when those two things happen in that order, joy, I call it joy juice, bzing, is released in our brain, in our head, literally in our head. We get a little aesthetic happy buzz. Happy juice, bzing, is released in our brain. We go, wow. If you don't mind me acting out what happens in your brain. Okay, so let's get back to work now. So that's what I want to have, how I want people to see. I guess I'll move down here a little bit. Here's what I want to happen. And again, non-artists don't need to understand. They don't need to go, golly, my brain just said paint. And then, again, I don't know why I've turned into goofy all of a sudden, but forgive me for my cartoon voices. The non-artist does not have to be aware of what's going on inside their mind. But as an artist, if you're an artist, it is, in fact, yes, our job to understand what is going on inside of our viewers' minds. And again, I believe that the best painting, now this does not, what I'm describing here does not include photorealism or super realism, even if it's not photorealism. That's a different world altogether. And everybody should do some super realistic painting so to get it out of their system. And then they should, in my humble opinion, they should graduate to painting. Like what last several weeks, I've been calling it Franz Hals, Franz, I believe, Hal. I've got two Z's now. One of those might be an S. Franz Hals, Dutch, 1700s. And I'm just using him. I could more easily say Rembrandt. Good painting is paint first, picture second. Paint first, picture second. That is a huge. Now, I didn't used to paint that way. Believe me, I spent decades as an illustrator doing picture first, paint second. And I didn't understand. I really didn't understand what was the big deal about, painterly strokes and all that kind of stuff. Now, I do think I was smart enough. I would have understood it if somebody had taught me, but nobody did. And, until somebody did, till I got it, till the light bulbs came on. That's some nice painting right there. I used to describe it this way, by the way. Hang on, I need some more yellow ochre on my palette. You guys want to see my palette? Oh, it's a thrill, I tell you. Everybody needs to see my palette. Here, let me zero you in here. It's a glass palette. I always do. I'm just in a habit, and you don't have to do like me at all, but it's a rainbow order. Violet, cool red, warm orange, yellow, cool. There could be a cad yellow light there, and in my case it would be cad, imitation cad. And then green, cool, warm green, cool green, warm blue, cool blue. Oh, I need some of that too. I've run out of, cool blue is ultramarine. Okay, so, and then the rainbow order starts over again. You understand? Like the next color in line would be violet, which is here. So that's the color wheel, broken open and put there. And then I do browns, light to dark. So here I only have two browns. I have yellow ochre, oxide red, and black. I don't even know what kind of black. What is it? It's a ivory black. And again, believe me, I know what your professors said, don't use black, but they were wrong. They should have said don't misuse black. Okay, so I needed more yellow on my palette, more yellow ochre. I've got that now. Need some. And so you see all the colors that are mixed here are what's happening on my painting right now. Let's go back to my painting. And of course, you accidentally see bits of my studio. Oh, by the way, I never say anything about this. Do you see that painting right there? Here. Do you see that right there? My mother gave me that years ago. That's an original print. You have to understand what I mean by that. It's an original print of a Maxfield Parrish painting. If you don't know Maxfield Parrish, do yourself a favor and just Google him, spelled just like it sounds, Maxfield Parrish, P-A-R-R-I-S-H. Great American painter of basically 100 years ago, although he worked into age. I think he did a last painting when he was 95 years old. And he was my mentor. He never met me, you understand? but I chased him for years and years and years and years. Okay, come on, let's get this color right. Come on, get that. It's gonna, come on. Come on, come on. Okay, there we go. It's a little bit slow. Finally got there. Now let's work up here. A minute ago I said, that's some nice painting right there. And when I say something, when an artist, I think when any artist says something like that, takes it, kind of raises their eyebrows, looks at their painting and say, golly, that's some pretty nice stuff right there. It's not bragging. It really is not. It's not, doesn't come from a place of boasting. It comes from a place of surprise or gratitude, like, wow, I can't believe I did that. That's really nice. And that is, okay, I'm going to stop right there. That's some good painting right there. While I've got this sort of dirty yellow ochre on my brush, however, let me see if there's anywhere else that I can put this painting. And there is. Let me raise you guys up so you're getting a little bit less glare for a minute. Okay, forgive me for shaking you all over the place. Hello, Eric S. I don't think I've ever had a comment from you before, have I? Thanks for joining me, man. Appreciate it. Okay, now I'm going to adjust you down, turn you down. Bear with me while I'm shaking you all over creation here. I'm trying to get so you're not getting so much glare on this paint. There we go. I was going to say, I just used this dirty yellow ochre, I'm calling it right here, mixed it up. So while I've got it on my brush, is there any place else I can use it? And then I realized, oh yeah, right up here. Again, I hope you're understanding. What do I mean by the canvas tells me? The answer is, I've got dirty yellow ochre on my brushes, and I look at my underpainting and say, is there anywhere else where this color shows up? And the answer is absolutely. It does right up here. So I come in here and add just little bits to what's already there. Now, part of the reason this works, I'm getting into my book, I'm getting into pretty philosophical, but bear with, visual philosophical. I don't mean like philosophy class philosophical. I mean the philosophy of visual aesthetics. One of the principles that we can understand is that our eyes enjoy being fooled. They enjoy being fooled by lots of things. That's so counterintuitive because most of us think, no, I don't enjoy being fooled. I don't like being fooled at all. Yeah, but when it comes to visual art, you do. You enjoy being manipulated by a visual artist. I don't like people manipulating me at all. If you ever saw a piece of art that you liked, any piece of art in the whole world that you actually liked, the reason you like it is because the artist succeeded in manipulating you. Okay, enough of that. Let me just proceed. So when there's a color already on the canvas, and then I mix up a little bit of it and add to it, our brain can't quite instantly tell what's on top of what paint is on top of what. And it enjoys that little, even if it's a split second, our brain enjoys that split second of confusion or ambivalence. It actually enjoys that. Our brain enjoys going, but what am I trying to say? Buddly. That's what our brain is doing when it's confused, and our brain gets a kick out of that. I know that sounds weird. Ignore me at your peril. Oh my goodness. By the way, that was another example of my hand has permission to have a little seizure without my permission. Okay, I am going to clean off some. Now, you know what? This would be a good place for me to take a break. I've been talking for a long time. Thank you for joining me. I caught some of your comments. I'll try to catch more later and respond to them. Again, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe and please let your fellow artists know what I'm doing over here, okay? I appreciate those of you who hang in there with me regularly. Well, let's get some more people into our fun little party, okay? Hello, welcome back. I decided I could fit one more broadcast in today. And this is a painting I've been working on for several days. Portrait of a wedding couple last Saturday. and I'm doing outer parts of the painting now. And just a few minutes ago, I started doing some of the details on this little arbor. I think that's what it's called. It's a little framework with plants. I'm indicating ivy. I don't know if it was ivy, but that'll do. Um, and I wanted, this is possibly a good teaching moment. I have some very, very dull green. In fact, on my palette, this color, it's a very army green. It hardly looks green at all on my palette, but when I put it on this canvas that has so much warm color on it, in reddish tones, it comes across as green. Okay, now this is opaque. In other words, it has. I don't think you can. I don't think you can see this. Can you? If I bring it up close, almost, almost. Okay, opaque paint. Um, Whoops, you're not getting any sound, are you? Okay, I am so sorry. I'll edit that later. You had 60 seconds of no sound. I am so sorry. Okay, let me start over. You can hear me now, right? Yeah. Um, Let me triple check. Yep, okay. I'm doing some of the details in this arbor, and I'm using opaque paint to do a dark color, which if you follow me at all, you know that's against the rules. So I'm breaking the rules. Every rule can be broken. That's why they're called the breakable laws of painting. Every law can be broken, but you better know why you're breaking it and how to get around it. So what the law I'm breaking here is I'm putting dark paint on top of light, and the dark paint I'm using is opaque. That is because normally you get dark with transparent. Why am I using opaque right now? The reason is because these are very small bits, and I feel like if I made them transparent, they'd be a little bit too punchy. It doesn't matter whether my explanation is correct. It's my eye is telling me this is the right thing, but that it's the right thing to do in this case, even though it's technically against the rules. Now, there's two things I'm going to do to follow up with this, and that's what I want to show you. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a slightly lighter shade of what I was just painting with. Again, both those words are important. Slightly lighter version of that green that I was just painting with a minute ago. Okay, that's done. And I'm going to come in here and touch again on top of the marks I already made. Just a few of them. Just a few of the marks. I'm touching with a slightly lighter color. That, what's the word? Obviates. That lets me get away with breaking that rule that I broke a minute ago about doing dark on top of light with an opaque color. Normally that creates mud. And in fact, the color that I just put down a minute ago was muddy. But can I make up this word? I'm demudifying it. I'm anti-muddying it by following up with a lighter color. Okay, that's one thing I'm going to do. The other thing, and yeah, I think I'll just use the same brushes. I'm going to wipe these off. So I'm not going to clean them perfectly. I'm just going to dry clean them. And I'm going to mix up a color now in this buff beige, warm tan color. So I'm mixing up some yellow ochre and titanium white and some dirty orange stuff that's already on my palette. Okay? And here's what I'm going to do. I'm coming in now where I put those little bits of fake leaf indication marks a little while ago. Right up next to those marks, I am now coming in with lighter, in other words, adjacent to my what is technically a muddy color, and I'm putting little bits of light next to them, and then all is well. So in a way, I got away with breaking the rule. Two rules. Well, no, one rule. I'll leave it to that. The one rule is we don't like to see dark paint on top of light, And for goodness sake, if you're going to do dark on top of light, make sure it's transparent. So, okay, so I broke 2 rules, but I've gotten away with it because I'm coming back and doing light colors adjacent to, right next to, right up against the dark colors that I just did a minute ago. And the result is everybody's happy. And I'm going to do one little thing to this arbor before I go, and that is it needs a little bit of color. So I'm going to come in here with, I put red on my brush, and not too much. It'd be real easy to overdo this. Little bits of red, a little bit more. I'm picking up a Scarlet Lake, which is one of my favorite red colors. It's a transparent, light, warm red that is tending toward orange. Okay. Now, one more thing I want to teach you that's very important. Have I got enough? I think I do. One more spot. Okay. I want you to see my face for this. Anytime that you do what I just did, just the last few minutes, where I have one color, and I did, let me count them. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 tiny little dots. That's 18 tiny little dots. That's about 15 too many, unless you do this. All the same color. You with me? Little tiny dots, about 18 of them. That's too many, unless you do this, and it's the same thing you've heard me say over and over and over again. I'm over here on my palette now mixing up a slightly lighter version of that red color. And I'm going to come in here and do on top of some of those dots a slightly lighter color red. Now, again, all is well with the world. Now it doesn't look as though I just took one color of paint and went, crazy doing that. Now that red in there is two-tone, and all of a sudden it works. Okay, I think I'm done with that arbor, at least for now. I'm going to wipe off the red off this. I basically, other than, second guessing everything tomorrow, when I come back to this painting tomorrow, and by the way, it is quite a luxury to have more than one day to work on a painting, but I knew that was going to be the case with this particular piece. Other than second guessing everything tomorrow, I have these lights to do up here. They're already ghosted in, as you can see. They're already fogged in, if I can use that word. My palette is so messy that I need to take a minute to clean it up. So I'll let you watch my palette. This is what I do anyway. It's glass, and I have a flat razor here. I can keep as many of these colors as I want, but I need some fresh room, and I'm almost finished with this painting anyway. So most of these colors were made to work on this particular painting. So I'm nearly finished with all of these colors. So I'm just going to clean it up. There we go. That goes in the trash right back there. And now I'm ready to mix up some new stuff. I don't want to get out a new brush. I'm going to keep using some old brushes. So I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. Just a dry clean, not swishing it in Gamsol or anything. And I want to make up a pale yellow, very pale. It's going to be the next layer on these lights. Okay, let's go back to the painting now. Okay, let's look. And by the way, I do have reference for this. Let me pull it up and you can see what I'm working. There's the photograph that I took of this background, this room, of course, before the wedding started happening. So that is my reference that I'm looking at while I do this. These lights up here. So I have a sort of a dirty yellow. In fact, I want to make them a little bit more yellow right now. And now I'm going to do this in several steps. As you can see, I've already done the lights at least once. I happen to know I've done them so far at least twice. And these are not like twinkly Christmas lights. These are those new kind of lights that are really popular these days. The antique looking Edison style, you know, light bulb about the size of a tube of paint. What size? You know, about this big. That's a funny analogy. Okay, so when I'm putting paint down right now, I'm hoping it's thick enough. I feel like I probably need to thicken it up just a little bit more. So let me get some more titanium white and some yellow, because I'm going to drag my brush through all of this in just a minute to smear it all. I'm going to make it all foggier. So this is a good trick for painting sparkly lights. I seem to find myself doing a lot of sparkly lights in my paintings. Speaking of which, since this is Christmas season when I'm doing this painting, it happens to be, and I've never heard anybody teach on this, but I'm completely convinced. You know, children like Christmas tree lights. Well, actually, the children in all of us like Christmas tree lights unless our inner child has died. When a city wants to make some part of some neighborhood particularly attractive to tourists and so on, they'll put sparkly lights in the trees. At Christmas time or at Hanukkah, we have lights, right? Here's the theory I'm proposing, that our attraction to sparkly lights is not, I don't believe it's a culturally learned thing. I believe it's hardwired into our brain. I think that our brains literally are drawn toward, we like sparkly lights. I don't think it's something we learn. I think it's all human beings, and it's either because of the way we were made or the way we evolved. Always trying to avoid getting a dog in that fight when I'm talking to you guys. That it was part of our eyes are attracted to points of light because points of light mean life, sunlight, daylight, and so on. Anyway, I believe that and I'm saying that's particularly pertinent to those of us who are trying to paint, because it's important to know that all human eyes are attracted to points of light. That's why children, and the children in all of us, like Christmas lights. It's hardwired into our brain. It's not, I don't think it's something that we learn. It is something that all human beings share, part of our common evolution/created order. That's the way our brain is supposed to work. Okay, now once again, I've put more paint, thicker paint, and I'm going to take a reasonably clean brush and drag it quickly through those piles of paint. It does not work to do this slowly. You can't, you cannot take your brush and stick out your tongue and go. Absolutely does not work. Has to be done quickly, or it will look like it was done slowly. Can you see where this is going? Now, one of the nice things about this kind of streaking is that if at any point there's too much of it, let me pick on one somewhere. Let's say this one right here. I feel like I don't really very much, but I'll pretend I do. Let's pretend there's too much. Well, it's a really easy fix. Do you see? I just shortened the tail of that light quite a bit. But you're beginning to see where this is going. I'm creating a what's the word? Sparkle, a distortion, lens distortion. Now, after every time that I smear it like that, I come back with even a slightly lighter, and in this case, slightly thicker mixture of that paint. Slightly lighter, slightly thicker. More titanium white and more of it. And repaint the bulbs. I don't think most people would, when they look at this, they can't quite figure out how I did it. They wouldn't normally think, oh, he painted those lights 3 or 4 or 5 times. But in fact, I am painting the lights 3, 4, or 5 times. I think you can see that all right. Let me pick you up and let you look at this straight on. Do you see the effect that is creating? The glow. And again, there's my reference, the photograph that I'm working from. So the effect that I'm getting is not far from the reference that I'm working from. Sometimes I'll even take, if I really want some lights to stand out, I'll take a palette knife and do some of the lights. This is called, when you have thick paint on the canvas, it's called impasto or impasto. Ironically, yes, it does come from the same Latin or Italian word as pasta that we eat, meaning paste, of course. But in painting, it's called impasto, thick paint. And this gives me a good moment to remind you that if you're going to do some light impasto, and almost all impasto is done, almost all of it is done with light colored paint, not dark, in representational painting anyway. That if this was regular titanium paint, regular titanium oil paint, as thick as some of this is, it would take 3 weeks for that to dry. That's why I don't buy regular titanium. That's why I buy, can you see that? Alkyd, A-L-K-Y-D. That's all that means. It's oil paint that dries quickly. It's got alkaline dryer in it. Okay, so good tip. If you want to do anything, any thick impasto, and people get a kick out of seeing impasto. I don't know how to say that word now. They get a kick out of seeing that in their paintings. People like it. Funny thing, it's our job as artists to know what people like seeing. They don't need to know why, that we know what they like. It's our secret. Okay, now let's just do a little bit more right down here. Again, let me show you my reference. Whoops, hang on here. There it is. Do you see this curtain? It's sheer fabric with lights hanging behind it. So that's the only part of this painting that I haven't quite finished yet. So let's do some of that right now, and I'll be very close to finished with this painting. I feel like this would be easy to overdo this, so I want to go kind of light-handed in this. I don't want this to distract from the bride and groom. In fact, let me step back for a second. No, I think I'm okay. I've just added a lot of energy up here at the top of this painting, and I was a little worried for a second there that I might have overdone it, but I think I'm okay. because there's a lot of fairly calm areas, passages in this painting. Now again, do you remember what I said a few minutes ago? I know from my experiences that human beings, all human beings, we like seeing points of light. And so I know that viewers, again, not being aware of that I'm aware of what they like, they will find themselves inevitably drawn toward some of these spots. Now, I think, looking at this right now, I think what I'm going to do here, I'll extend this live broadcast just long enough for you to see this. I'm going to take a fan brush. So again, sort of the same idea as what I did just a little while ago, except this time, instead of using a big chip brush, I'm going to use a fan brush, and I'm going to fuzz the dots that I'm making right now, because I'm finding them a little bit too prominent, a little bit too dotty. But if I soften them, I feel like the effect will be just perfect. By the way, you can see the color that I'm putting on over here is much darker than the color I put there. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Let's pick up. I've got this very soft fan brush. Let me see if this will accomplish what I want here. If not, I'll pick up a stiffer fan brush. Very, very, very soft fan brush. Yeah, I think that's working well. You hear me rubbing a little bit harder as I get over here, softening these points of light even more than these. Now, if I want to, yeah, I think I do. Just a few of these lights I want to come in. Again, with whoops, it has to be clean though. You can't have dirty paint on your brush. That doesn't, on your palette knife. That doesn't work at all. Let me do that again. Get clean paint on that palette knife. Just a few of these points of light I want to stand out a little bit more than the rest. Okay, so there's a number of tricks I've shown you. Hope that was helpful. Let me just pick you up and let you see a front-on view of this painting before I go. This might be the last episode I do of this particular painting. I'm just about finished. Thanks so much for watching. Hope that's been helpful, and I will certainly post this finished painting on my wedding painting website, which, if you don't know, is weddingpaintermagic.com. Or if you just Google Dan Nelson wedding painter, it'll take you to my wedding painting website. So if you want to see a better reproduction of any of my wedding paintings, go there. So I believe that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you like what I'm doing, please subscribe. And if you really like it, send money. No, that's not what I was going to say. And that'll come later. We'll work on that later. If you really like it, tell your artist friends what I'm doing over here, okay? Thanks so much. Appreciate it.